Hi guys, this is Connelly Gonzalez and welcome to your Information Security newspaper channel. Well, today we have a very interesting interview with one of the experts on cybersecurity. His name is Raj Sami. Have you ever wondered who is out there fighting to protect the security of the information we share online? Well, today we have a very interesting interview with one of the experts on cybersecurity. He was a Mcafee VP and CTO, Chief Technology Officer, and is today a Mcafee Chief Scientist. He is also a Special Advisor to the Europol Cybercrime Center, as well as Chief Innovation Officer for the Cloud Security Alliance. He is a co-author of the books Applied Cybersecurity and the Smart Grid, and CSA, A Guide to Cloud Computing. He has also received many cybersecurity awards, such as being included in the InfoSecurity Europe Hall of Fame, the Peter Source Award, and the Intel Achievement Award. And more important, he is a very active member of the cybersecurity industry, and he has very important information for you today. And well, we at the International Institute of Cybersecurity would like to thank Raj Sami for his time and for this opportunity. Well, I don't want to take more of your time. Let's go and see the interview with Raj Sami.
Okay, we're there finally.
Well, thank you so much, Raj.
Okay.
Well, I'm Connelly Gonzalez, and I'm working with the marketing team of the International Institute of Cybersecurity. My teammate, Daniel Sanchez, is here with me.
Hey, hello, Raj. Thank you so much for the opportunity and for your time.
No worries.
And well, the purpose of this interview is to talk about you and your work in the cybersecurity industry. But first of all, how are you today? How was your day?
It's been a long week. Usually whenever there's any major sort of patch Tuesday and any major vulnerabilities, it's usually quite a long and quite a stressful week. But that's what we do, right?
Right. Well, we did some research about you, about your work with Mcafee and with the Cloud Security Alliance, as well as of your books about the smart grid and about cloud computing. And we also know that you have received many cybersecurity awards. So as Mcafee Chief Scientist and as a Special Advisor to the Europol Cybercrime Center and as an expert on the subject, what will you say are the most persistent threats that private users, businesses, and governments face?
Oh wow. Well, so I think the biggest or the most persistent issue that we see is the fact that it's constantly changing and it's constantly evolving and it's constantly adapting. I mean, 20 years ago, like I'll give you an example, right? So one of the initiatives I co-founded was No More Ransom. And of course, we were talking about ransomware 5 years ago. And today we're talking about ransomware like it's the same thing, but it's not. We talk about, criminals getting into environments and actually like stealing information and then extorting them to pay money. And if they don't pay money, then they're going to, release all of the data, which of course is a GDPR issue. So like for me, the biggest challenge that I think we face, like me personally, the biggest challenge I face is my children. From a cybersecurity broader perspective, I think like the adversarial innovation is the biggest challenge that we face because they're getting better, they're getting smarter, they are evolving all of the time, and no longer is it just this perception of a lone individual. Now we're talking about fully funded organized criminal gangs, we're talking about nation state groups, and so that's I think the biggest challenge that we have is the adversary.
Okay.
All right. Well, you have previously said that manufacturers don't really care about security of information and how cybersecurity is usually underestimated. So how can we as consumers do something to demand better products cybersecurity-wise?
Well, so I think we need to ask the question, when you go out and buy something, you'll ask you'll ask maybe what features it has, or you'll ask maybe things of how much it costs. But like at no point do we ever ask ourselves the question, well, do you as a manufacturer have a vulnerability disclosure policy? Right? Because for me, that's important. Yeah, actually, I'm in the market for buying a new car, and that actually is one of the questions that I look at, which is, I want to buy an electric car. I want to buy a car that has autonomous driving capability built in. So I want to know whether the manufacturer of the car does simple things like, hey, do you have a vulnerability disclosure program? Do you actively have a security research team? Do you have any security research partnerships? And like, you might say to me, well, that's what you'll do because you work in cybersecurity. But look, if I start to ask for these questions, other people I hope will start to ask those questions, and then maybe security can be seen as maybe a differentiator. Because if you're buying a car that will literally drive itself,
Okay.
you want to know that they actively do research against vulnerabilities against that platform. Like, it's a matter of life and death. So those are the questions that I think we've got to start asking.
We know that you're the co-author of Applied Cybersecurity and Smart Grid. So could you share us more about your book for the viewers?
Well, so actually, I want to talk about my favorite chapter, which is the chapter around privacy, because it's interesting. We talk about smart grids and we think about critical infrastructure and we talk about nation state attacks. But for me, what the smart grid represents is really a change that's going on in our own homes, because there was a time when you had privacy in your home, but now we don't. And the smart meters themselves, I think, are an interesting aspect of that. And so one of the things I talked a lot about was non-intrusive activity load monitoring, where literally electrical signals within the house are being captured by these little devices. And of course, from that, we can determine, when you have the jacuzzi on, when you have the TV on. And if you reduce something like the polling interval, then of course, you actually have the opportunity to be able to determine what TV shows you're watching. And, for me, this kind of represents a change in the way that we live, because, we're worried about social networks having all of this information about us. But the reality is that in the future, the utility companies will know the fact that you're watching Game of Thrones before it comes out, or you're watching, the latest Fast and Furious 47, because that's the latest movie. But like, we know that you're watching that. And so, and also, if you're growing marijuana, then people are going to know this. And so, for me, this is more like, I obviously wrote the book years ago, but the thing that's always stuck with me about all of the research that we did was there is a change in the way that we are going to live as a society. And if we don't arm ourselves with information and we don't articulate what the issues are and we don't tell our businesses that we work with, this is okay or this is not okay, then every single thing that we do is going to be tracked, monitored, and monetized for the benefit of other people. And I don't think that's acceptable. Oh, so they are vulnerable. Like, so everything is vulnerable. It just takes a matter of time, right? That's the reality. So we've got to accept, like, right now we shame companies that have had a security incident. And I think, again, that's wrong as well, because we don't expect every company to be able to be 100% secure all of the time, right? We know that that's an old adage. But what you do expect of companies that are managing your data is that they do everything they can with all reasonable measures. And so the questions that we have are, it's not have you been breached or not, because that's unfair. That's an unfair kind of stick to beat organizations with. The question is, okay, have you taken the appropriate measures to protect information about me and my family? And that should be it's due diligence, right? That's what the lawyers would call it. But that has to be the fundamental question that we have to base our society on, which is, have you taken reasonable measures? But if we don't ask the question, then we're going to live in a world in which, we'll buy devices that will have open microphones in the house. We'll live in a world in which, supermarkets will know when children or young preteens or teens are pregnant before their fathers do. We'll live in a world in which cars will be tracked, and every single thing and everywhere that you go will be managed and monitored by third parties. We'll live in a world in which social media companies will influence elections. By the way, that's where we live in today, right? So if we want to change that, then I think this small group of InfoSec professionals needs to start to articulate the issue in a better way.
So what will be your recommendation to all those third world countries that are new to smart grids?
So I think like all of the organizations in every country, whether it's third world, whether it's first world even, like start to look at the use of technology as a means and a way to be able to, increase and like introduce a level of efficiency and introduce a balanced marketplace that we desperately need today, right? Right now, the way that we manage the supply and demand of energy is really inefficient. And so we need to embrace technology. And I would always encourage organizations across the world to embrace technology, but start to consider the security risks and start to consider the privacy risks and begin a process of working, engaging, and collaborating with the consumer in mind to find something where the risk is managed and mitigated and constantly tracked as well, because it's always evolving. Don't just go out and buy technology based upon cost or based upon features. The risk is for me, the fundamental issue we need to address.
Okay. Well, you also wrote a CSA Guide to Cloud Computing, and you actually work for a Cloud Security Alliance. So what do you think will be the biggest threat for cloud security in the future?
Well, the biggest threat, I think, with anything is our use of it. The more that we begin to use the cloud, the more that adversaries will begin to focus on the cloud. It's the same thing with any devices that we use or any platforms that we use. The adversary is very close behind our adoption of new technology. I mean, if you look at the price of Bitcoin, for example, like I think when we did the analysis, we saw literally there was a 1 week delay between the price of Bitcoin and the number of coin miners that we saw out there. So these are the challenges that I think we face as an industry, which is like how fundamentally do we need to always stay one step ahead of the adversary constantly. And like there's an asymmetry of information, and they know everything that we do and we don't know anything that they do. So look, I love technology. I'm a technologist, and so we have to find ways to be able to use technology whilst managing and mitigating the risks.
So, well, in these situations or right now, what will you say are the first steps in building a culture of cybersecurity in every aspect of our lives?
You need to talk to people. Like, and this is not just me, going to, because I used to be a CISO and, and like I thought it was my responsibility. But actually what I realized is that in every single conversation I have, I need to talk to people about why this matters. And let me give you a case in point. So I'm like at least once a quarter, but usually once a month, I'll go and speak at schools to young kids and explain to them why cybersecurity, right? And not like you need to do this because there are bad guys on the internet, but really to get people to understand this is about every single aspect of our lives. It controls, it controls whether you get a mortgage. It controls whether you get a job. It controls, how you get to work. It controls whether I have electricity in the house, and everything is underpinned by the three tenets of security, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And and maybe this is our fault, maybe this is our industry have kind of made people believe that this is about malware, APT groups, and technology, but it's not. The impact is bigger than that. And I saw this with my own eyes after the WannaCry ransomware outbreak, where I was in the hospital and I actually saw them switch off the internet. I saw the impact that it has, and yet we still regard this as an IT issue, but it impacts jobs, it impacts every element of our lives. And I think, like, without scaring people, without trying to mystify what we do, just talking to people about the job that we do, explaining to them, hey, look, you know what? Maybe you don't want to have your 11-year-old on this social network because actually, you don't know who she's going to be communicating with. And actually, you don't know if she's going to be going to meet somebody in the offline world. And also, maybe this is the opportunity for them to introduce this as a career opportunity for their children. So I spoke at Bletchley Park and I had some parents come and talk to me about getting their kids into this industry. And so just take some time out. Maybe like each of us need to take some time out, go to a school, talk to young kids, speak to people, and not say, well, I stop hackers and malware, but say, actually, look, security, cybersecurity or trust in the digital systems we lead and depend upon is the fabric of our society, and it's not about security. To me, it's about trust.
Yeah, here in the institute, sometimes we visit some enterprises or some schools to talk them about malwares, ransomware that is.
Well, and I think that's a great point, because like when you talk to organizations, you talk about ransomware and they go, oh yeah, it's an IT problem, we need to deal with it. But fundamentally, the impact of a post-intrusion ransomware attack is the loss of availability of all critical systems, information, and data, as well as a lack of trust within all of your single stakeholders, as well as negative PR. I mean, that's not an IT issue. That maybe the initial cause could be an IT issue, but fundamentally, that's not an IT problem. This is a fundamental organizational risk. And I often kind of I find it remarkable that we don't have IT security people, well, people with a security background, as a CIO or a CTO or a CEO. Having those individuals that understand the ability to be able to manage trust and the ability to be able to manage risk, for me, is the fundamental, most important thing for organizations moving forward.
Okay.
Well, before you were speaking about children, so what advice do you give your kids about how to use social media?
Oh, where do you start? That's like honestly, that's the hardest job of my life. Like, it really is. And like I think I started kind of knocking every system down, not preventing them access, and I kind of do that today with the young ones. I kind of they can't install any new apps, they can't download any new system. Like, everything they do has to be approved by me. And of course, I get these requests to download apps, and I have to review the apps, I have to look at the data they have, and it's hard, right? It takes a lot of time. Well, with the older ones, what I've started to do is obviously, like, have that conversation with them regularly. And we had a long debate and discussion about TikTok the other day, right? I'll be honest, half of these apps that come out, I didn't even know what TikTok was, right? And she goes, Dad, like, I'm installing this app called TikTok. And I'm like, well, what is it? And I had to do my research, but then I had the discussion and I got to know about it. Same as Snapchat. I mean, Instagram I was on anyway. So it's all about having that conversation and that dialogue. And I think, like, as long as you have the ability to have that conversation, you need to do your research and then talk to them about, well, this is what's acceptable and this is what's not acceptable. I think that's the way forward, because what scares me more than anything is, if you're a child today, if you're 15, 16 years old and you're caught on video saying something racist, for example, right? You might be drunk, or you might say something that you say something you regret. Like, that stuff can taint you for the rest of your life. I mean, and so what really scares me is that children today, like, they've got this remarkable opportunity, but fundamentally, it comes back down to this underlying issue, which is you're not allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And that, that's the point of being a child, is that you learn from your mistakes, you make mistakes, and so that's what scares me, right? If you want to ask me what worries me, what scares me about my children, it's they're going to say and do something stupid. It's going to be captured digitally, and it will completely be to the detriment of their future careers.
And well, do your kids like using devices such as Amazon Echo or Google Home?
So they brought one of those devices home. So I got given one as a present, and then it was downstairs, and my daughter literally installed it within like minutes, right? Because it's easy to do. And I came upstairs and I heard all the kids going, "Hey, device." I'm not going to say which one, but "Hey, device, tell me a joke." And honestly, I was like freaked out. So when she went to bed, I took it off her, put it on eBay, and had it out of the house within days. But but ultimately I ended up having the conversation with her because, like, for me, like, and people can use the device by all means, but I feel uncomfortable having a device which has a permanently on microphone inside my home. Like, it doesn't matter who you are or which company you're from. I don't want any open microphones inside my house. I was like, no, and same with the TV. We disabled everything we've done has been disabling that, and so yeah, we had the conversation.
Well, Raj, a lot of millennials are interested in cybersecurity, as you might know, and they see you as an idol. So, what career path should they follow so one day they can be like you?
Well, you don't want to be like me. I mean, I'm like really 21 and I've got gray hair now, right? I think the advice I'd always give to people is just do what you've done. Like, there's some really great people. I met like Hoy Carr on Twitter. I don't know if you know Hoy, but Hoy is like a phenomenal, expert in Active Directory, or Guillaume, who's been like just reach out to people, talk to people, because when I was starting in this industry, we didn't have the luxury of being able to reach out to people that we looked up to in our industry because we didn't have these social networks. It wasn't like it was. And yet you've got this opportunity to start to reach out. And I'll tell you, our industry gets a lot of bad press, but we've got some wonderful people here, really, really lovely people. We do argue and debate a lot, and there is a lot of flaming going back and forth, but fundamentally we're good people. And so, get yourself online, follow the people you want to follow, reach out to them, ask them to mentor you, or, like we do that all of the time. Is I'll have people that will come to the office, or we'll show them around, or we'll spend time with them, or maybe we've done internships and stuff. So, like, if you want to start to establish your career in this industry, just ask people. I mean, most people are fairly open, and you've got the opportunity to be able to get access to them.
Okay.
Well, recently we did an interview with Michael Gillespie about No More Ransomware. So, what do you think of his work?
Michael Gillespie's awesome. He's like brilliant. I mean, the work that he's done to produce decryptors free of charge shows exactly what this industry is about. I mean, it's like with us, right? So of course he got involved with Lawrence over at Bleeping Computer, and Fabian Wosar over at MCSoft, and I have so much respect for what they've done, because they take time out of their lives to produce free decryptors for people to get their data back without paying criminals. Well, that's exactly what we've done with No More Ransom, and and of course now that MCSoft and Bleeping Computer are part of the team, within No More Ransom. Now we have over 100 plus decryptors, and
okay. And what are your plans for the future?
and so there's stuff I'd love to do. I've actually been like looking at least 2 different book options, because I do want to write a book that is more accessible, because I think the last 2 books I wrote were quite technical, right? Were quite detailed, and so what I'd love to be able to do is do stuff that kind of bridges that gap. And like there was the Cuckoo's Egg, the original book by Cliff Stoll, that got me into this industry, and there haven't been many books that have bridged that gap. So I think that one of the plans is to do a book around that. Work is pretty intense, and so continuing the work, building out the team, making sure that we do work that is protecting people across the world, I think is going to be key. But I'd like to see No More Ransom grow. Of course, I'd like to find a way that we can have like every decryptor there is, which I know is which I know is hard, which I know is a challenge. But ultimately, I think really for me, like, continuing the work that we do, but making sure the work that we do has that ability to be able to integrate into levels of society.
That's interesting.
Well, can you tell us more about election hacking?
Well, I think it depends upon how you approach the issue, because propaganda, is that election hacking? I think those are some of the and this is where we come back down to that fundamental question we started at the beginning, which is like, what is what is election interference? What is election hacking? Is going on social media to try to influence votes, is that cybersecurity? And for me, well, look, it's propaganda has been around for centuries. I mean, it's happened through elections, throughout the kind of, as soon as we started inventing democracy, right? Fake news and manipulative information. So the issue that we have today, though, is that the simplicity and the autonomous nature in which it can be done. It's no longer, well, I can, put stuff in the newspaper and hope people read it. Now you actually have the ability to openly and actively influence people. And so for me, that's one of the challenges that we face is that, we've got this great concept of technology, and it provides us with enormous, wonderful opportunities to be able to speak, right? That's how we met. That's how we started to talk to each other. But equally, there's nefarious actions around it. Now, we talk around misinformation through social media, but there's also the challenge of deepfakes, which we anticipate to be an issue, moving on from now, right, from 2020 and onwards. And now you have the ability to be able to make somebody appear to say something that they didn't. And so the challenge that we face today is that, how do we begin to address some of these fundamental technological opportunities that can then be turned against us? And that of course, that's the work that we do. That's the work that we do as an industry. That's the work that the government does. It's the work that policymakers do. And finding a way to collaborate and work together to provide a safer environment and an environment where we have better integrity, which is fundamentally what this is going to be key.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Well, as you got to see, Raj is an expert on the matter, as well as a very accessible person. Well, we hope you enjoyed the interview. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe. My name is Connelly Gonzalez, and I wish you the very best.